Hey there, interwebs, and welcome back to Flagshaming. If you're a returning viewer, you may recall that for Pride Month last year, I redesigned a slew of LGBTQ+ community flags. At that time, I spoke my piece on the subject, calling the wide majority of queer pride flags Technicolor barcodes, but there was one sexual orientation-specific pride flag which I chose not to address: the straight pride flag, the barcodiest of them all. Why I didn't discuss the flag representing the heterosexual community during Pride Month should hopefully be obvious, but I consider it to be a strong contender for the worst pride flag, so now it gets its own episode. Whether or not the straight community even needs a pride flag is a matter open to debate, but, as a reminder, this series does not exist to debate the validity of flags, and my choice to examine them is neither condoning nor condemning whatever beliefs they may stand for. I just want to praise or shame their designs. That's it. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. This flag design is crap. Shame! And that's coming from me, a guy who really likes a good black and white flag design. I guess in the future I should put more emphasis on the good part of that description. Seriously, I don't even identify as straight anymore, and I'm still offended by the uninspired laziness of my former flag. I've heard it derisively called the zebra pride flag, but that's an insult to zebras. The weird thing is, this flag should get no lower than a B- according to my own flag grading rubric based on the 5 principles of flag design. It's simple enough that a child could draw it from memory, with only 2 colors and no writing, and it's clearly related to the other pride flags with those horizontal stripes. The only place where it stumbles is in symbolism, but here it stumbles so hard that it breaks both legs, internally lacerates its femoral artery, and bleeds to death unknown and unmourned in the vexillological gutter. If that sounds harsh, you need to understand the issue with its symbolism. It doesn't have any. Not of its own, at any rate. For a bit of contrast, no pun intended, the current LGBTQ pride flag uses its 6 bars of color to create a rainbow which represents a diverse community, so anyone sticking extra stripes on is failing its symbolism, and the straight pride flag uses 6 bars of alternating black and white to not be a rainbow, and that's the limit of its symbolism. Now, if you ask me, you should never define yourself as not something else, because if the definition of something else ever changes, you either have to change your definition or someone else will. In essence, you're allowing others to define your behavior. Instead, you should identify yourself by what you are, not by what you aren't. As a matter of fact, this is why I was opposed to the term queer for a long time, and why I'm still opposed to it as a label for individuals. Perhaps its most common use at present is as a synonym for LGBTQ+, and I'm all in favor of going from 6 syllables down to 1, so I like the term when it's referring to our community as a whole. It's a good blanket term for not cisgender heterosexual. The problem only arises when the word queer is applied at an individual level. Case in point, say we have an ace, a lesbian, and a trans man. They're all queer, but that's just about the only thing they have in common. One can be any gender with no sexual attraction, one has to be a woman attracted solely to women, and the other has to be assigned female at birth but identifying as male and can be attracted to anyone or no one at all. Calling any one of them queer, i.e. not cishet, is technically correct, but it's still incredibly vague, like describing a rich, savory steak dinner with creamy butter and crisp greens as not chocolatey. That's not wrong, but the statement is so vague as to be nearly vacuous. When referring to a specific person, use specificity. That whole rant was just me taking the long way around the barn to return to the vexillological double negative that is the straight pride flag. The rainbow flag is a polychrome spectrum and represents a community which is not cishet, and the straight pride flag is black and white to not be a rainbow, symbolizing that they're not cishet. Plus, in my subjective personal opinion, it just looks incredibly dull, lacking in both color and shapes. So let's look at some new designs. First up, we have this red and black number. Since there's no central device like on my other Pride redesigns, I'd like to tell you more about the symbolism of its colors instead. I'd like to, but I can't. Much like the current straight Pride design, these stripes have no symbolism, but in my defense that's because I didn't consciously design this flag. It came to me wholly in a dream back when I was redesigning the other Pride flags. Nevertheless, I do like how the vertical stripes symbolically contrast the horizontal stripes found on queer Pride flags, and while the rainbow Pride flag represents a full spectrum of color, these black stripes are the absence of it. They also, in my opinion, somewhat evoke the vertical lines of a stylized H for hetero. Obviously, all of this symbolism is imposed upon it ex post facto, so let's move on. Weirdly, that wasn't the only straight pride flag I've unintentionally designed. The second one looks like this. It may look like it's just a solid blue field, but there's also a pink and purple stripe that aren't on it. Before I can explain what that means, you have to understand something called the Kinsey scale. It is, in essence, a categorization system which asks the question, on a scale of 0 to 6, how gay are you, with 0 being not gay at all, exclusively heterosexual, and 6 being exclusively homosexual, or totes gay to use the modern vernacular. 3, being right in the middle, represents perfectly even bisexuality, while 2 and 4 are essentially bisexual with a preference. The technical terms used in conjunction with the scale are predominantly heterosexual, but more than incidentally homosexual, and vice versa. I currently identify as a Kinsey 2, and I was a little upset that we don't have our own flag separate from the generic bi-pride flag, which carries Kinsey 3 implications. To remedy the situation, I facetiously created this design, which moves the purple stripe up, leaving more blue and less pink. Those two colors represent hetero and homosexuality on the current design, FYI. I then realized that since the stripes of pink and blue on the bi flag are each twice as wide as the purple stripe, there were 5 natural positions for the purple stripe to be in, and each one could correlate to a Kinsey score of 1 through 5. By moving the stripe all the way off the bottom or top, it would also cover 6 and 0, with the latter representing absolute heterosexuality. As an aside, Reddit user TechnoToad64 combined designs 1 through 5 into this lovely piece to represent all 5 scores of bisexuality, and I expanded it to cover the whole Kinsey scale. We also created these designs in Bend to represent a smoother, more natural scale. The square version also resembles the Bolivian Guafala, which prompted some commenters to nickname it the Bolivian flag or the Bifala, with the latter becoming its creator's official name for it. Returning to the subject of straight pride flags, I suppose this solid blue field, -1, would technically be an example, but unless you're Libya, you can't have a flag which is just a solid color field. Here, I decided to add stripes of black and white from the current straight pride design, which also transformed the remaining negative space into an H, again for hetero. I wasn't crazy about the design, so I used it as a base for a series of experimental flags using bars and H's in various combinations of black, white, and blue. I even made a few variants with pink for cishet women. Eventually, I decided to go back to basics, that is to say, my 3 basic rules for these redesigns. Horizontal stripes, central symbol, unified color palette. The stripes of black, white, and blue and/or pink were a no-brainer, but what I should use as a central symbol gave me more trouble. I played with a capital H for hetero, which could also be easily turned into an A for ally, but with rare exceptions like Colorado's state flag, I'm not a huge fan of letters on flags, even when they're just initials. Additionally, the H could also just as easily stand for homo. Heterosexuality doesn't really have any other symbols, however. Bisexuality has the moons, asexuality has aces, but the only thing that the hets have is the interlinked male and female symbols, and that feels a little too on the nose. What else could I use, though? Ultimately, I ended up going with the linked symbols, although I did modify them slightly to also resemble a heart transfixed by Cupid's arrow. Is this design perfect? No. But does it need to be? Does a straight pride flag even need to exist in the first place? If you answered yes to that last question, you're more than welcome to take this design and tune it up to perfection, whatever you consider that to be, because I'd like to move on. One more flag which I want to address before concluding this video is that of straight allies, because while the straight pride flag is terrible, the straight ally flag is a tragedy. What's the difference, you may ask? A terrible flag is merely bad, but a flag only becomes tragic when there's a glimpse of greatness within. For this reason, I grouped the Ally flag together with Mississippi's former flag. Both are excellent flag designs which are unfortunately and inseparably tied to much worse flags. In the case of Mississippi's former flag, it was a marvelous design. It was simple, used meaningful symbolism, 3 basic colors and no writing, and it was related to a historical flag design. The only problem was that the flag it paid homage to represented a group of secessionists who wanted to treat human beings like property. If you can divorce the flag from the cause in your mind, however, it's an objectively fantastic design. The same is true for the straight allies flag. It's a great design with the brilliant idea to incorporate a stylized A from the rainbow flag. It's just a shame that the base flag itself is so bad. How could I fix it, though? I did tinker with some A for ally variants of my H for hetero designs, but I'm not as fond of any of them as I am of the current tragedy, and the entire concept is one of dubious necessity in the first place. After all, if you're a straight ally and want to show your support for the queer community, this is the flag you should fly. Yes, it is just the standard rainbow flag. You don't have to be queer to wave it, because, say it with me now, the rainbow represents everyone. And that's all I've got for today. As always, thanks for watching, love and let love, and have a lovely Valentine's Day.